1512. One of the greatest cities in the Americas was about to disappear, not after centuries of slow decline, but after a brutal siege that lasted only a few months. Tenochtitlan, a city built on an island in the middle of a lake, was surrounded. Its people were starving, disease was spreading, its warriors were exhausted, and its final emperor was running out of time. When the city finally fell, an entire political world collapsed with it. This is the last day of the Aztec Empire. Around the early 14th century, a migrating people known as the Mexica entered the Valley of Mexico. They were not yet powerful. They had no great city, no empire, and many of the established peoples of the region viewed them as outsiders, but the Mexica carried a sacred story. According to tradition, their god Huitzilopochtli had promised them a sign, an eagle perched on a cactus, holding a serpent. When they found that sign, they would know where to build their home. Around 1325, on an island in Lake Texcoco, they founded Tenochtitlan, the city that would become the heart of an empire. Today, modern Mexico City stands above its ruins. At first, Tenochtitlan was only one settlement among many, but the Mexica grew rapidly. They fought, they negotiated, they formed alliances, and in 1428, Tenochtitlan joined with Texcoco and Tlacopan. Together, they formed what historians call the Triple Alliance. This alliance became the foundation of the Aztec Empire. One city after another was forced to pay tribute. Food, cotton, cacao, gold, feathers, weapons, and precious goods flowed toward Tenochtitlan. By the early 16th century, the empire dominated much of central Mexico, and Tenochtitlan had become one of the largest cities in the Americas. Causeways connected the island to the mainland, canals crossed the city, aqueducts carried fresh water, great temples rose above enormous ceremonial plazas, markets were filled with food, jewelry, cloth, ceramics, and goods carried from across Mesoamerica. When Europeans finally saw Tenochtitlan, many could hardly believe what stood before them. A vast city rising from the water, but behind its wealth, the empire carried a dangerous weakness. Many of the peoples beneath Aztec rule hated their rulers, and soon someone would learn how to use that hatred. Religion stood at the center of Aztec life. The Mexica believed that the universe depended on balance, sacrifice, and obligation to the gods. Human sacrifice formed part of that religious system. Captives taken in war could be brought to the great temples of Tenochtitlan and sacrificed during religious ceremonies. The exact scale is still debated by historians. Ancient sources give enormous numbers, but some of those claims may have been exaggerated. What is certain is that human sacrifice was real, and warfare supplied captives. For neighboring peoples forced to pay tribute to the Aztec Empire, resentment grew. Some had lost warriors, some had lost independence. Others simply wanted Tenochtitlan weakened. That resentment would soon become more powerful than any Spanish cannon. 1519 ships appeared on the Gulf Coast of Mexico. Their commander was Hernán Cortez. He had sailed from Cuba, searching for wealth, power, and opportunity. He arrived with only a few hundred Spaniards against an empire containing millions of people. The numbers seemed absurd, but Cortez possessed several advantages. The first was the horse. The peoples of central Mexico had never seen living horses. Mounted soldiers could move with terrifying speed. The second advantage was European weaponry, steel swords, crossbows, early firearms, and artillery. These weapons were not magical, and they did not make the Spaniards invincible, but they gave them tactical advantages. Then came something far more devastating. Disease, smallpox, brought from the old world, would eventually sweep through populations with no previous exposure to it, but Cortez possessed one weapon, even more important than guns, horses, or steel. Enemies of the Aztecs. As he moved inland, Cortez encountered peoples who deeply resented Tenochtitlan. Some fought him, others eventually joined him. Most important among them were the Tlaxcalans. They became essential allies. Without indigenous allies, the conquest of the Aztec Empire would almost certainly have been impossible. And while Cortez advanced, the Aztec emperor watched. His name was Moctezuma II. He ruled from Tenochtitlan, and now strangers from across the ocean were approaching his capital. They carried unfamiliar weapons, they rode unknown animals, and they were gathering enemies of the empire around them. Moctezuma had to decide whether to destroy them or welcome them. He chose to let them come. November 1519, Cortez and his allies entered Tenochtitlan. The Spaniards were stunned. They saw enormous temples, busy markets, canals filled with boats, and streets crowded with people. This was not a primitive settlement. It was one of the great urban centers of the Americas. Moctezuma welcomed Cortez with ceremony, but the relationship quickly changed. The Spaniards feared being trapped inside the city. Cortez feared that Moctezuma could order his death at any moment, so he made an extraordinary move. He seized the emperor. Moctezuma, ruler of the Aztec Empire, became a prisoner inside his own capital. For a time, Cortez attempted to rule through him, but tension inside Tenochtitlan continued to grow. Then Cortez was forced to leave the city temporarily to confront another Spanish force sent against him. He left Pedro de Alvarado in command, and while Cortez was gone, disaster struck. During a major religious festival, Alvarado and his men attacked Aztec nobles and participants. Many were killed. Tenochtitlan exploded in rebellion. When Cortez returned, the city was no longer under Spanish control. It had become hostile territory. Fighting erupted everywhere. Moctezuma died during the chaos. Exactly how remains uncertain. Spanish accounts blamed the Aztecs. Other traditions blamed the Spaniards. But one fact was undeniable. Cortez had lost control. On the night of June 30th, 1520, the Spaniards attempted to escape. They moved across the causeways under darkness, carrying weapons, supplies, and as much gold as they could take. Then the alarm was raised. Aztec warriors attacked from canoes, rooftops, and causeways. The retreat became a disaster. Men drowned beneath the weight of stolen gold. Others were cut down in the darkness. Hundreds of Spaniards and many of their indigenous allies were killed. The survivors barely escaped. The night became known to the Spaniards as La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. According to later tradition, Cortez sat beneath a tree and wept. He had entered Tenochtitlan as a guest. He left it as a defeated invader. For a moment, the Aztec Empire had won, but Cortez was still alive, and he was coming back. After the Night of Sorrows, Cortez rebuilt his army, but this time the Spanish were only a small part of it. Thousands upon thousands of indigenous warriors joined him. Tlaxcalans, and other peoples hostile to Aztec power. This was no longer simply Spain against the Aztecs. It was also a Mesoamerican war. Old rivalry, old grievances, and old hatreds were now being turned against Tenochtitlan. Then an invisible enemy arrived: smallpox. The disease spread through the region with devastating speed. People became sick in enormous numbers. Families disappeared. Warriors died. Leaders died. Moctezuma's successor, Cuitlahuac, died from the disease only months after becoming ruler. The Aztecs were fighting 2 wars at once, one against Cortez and another against an enemy they could not see. In 1521, Cortez returned to Tenochtitlan. This time, he did not intend to negotiate. He intended to destroy the city's ability to resist. But Tenochtitlan stood on an island. To conquer it, he needed control of Lake Texcoco, so Cortez ordered small warships, known as brigantines, to be constructed. Their pieces were transported overland, reassembled, and launched onto the lake. Now the Spanish and their allies could attack from water and land. The causeways were blocked, aqueducts were cut, food supplies disappeared, fresh water became scarce. Day after day, the attackers moved deeper into the city, house by house, street by street, canal by canal. The defenders fought desperately. Buildings were destroyed, bodies filled the waterways, hunger spread, disease continued to kill, and still the Aztecs refused to surrender. Their final emperor, Cuauhtémoc, had taken power during the crisis. He was young, determined, and surrounded. But he continued the defense. For weeks, Tenochtitlan fought on. The city that had once ruled central Mexico was slowly being strangled until finally there was nowhere left to retreat. August 13th, 1521. The final day, Tenochtitlan was collapsing. Its temples were damaged, its streets filled with ruins, its population starving. Spanish and Allied forces pushed into the last remaining areas of resistance. Cuauhtémoc attempted to leave the city across the lake. He boarded a canoe, hoping to escape. But Spanish vessels intercepted him. The last Aztec emperor was captured. He was brought before Cortez. According to Spanish accounts, Cuauhtémoc remained composed. One tradition records him asking Cortez to take his dagger and kill him. He had done everything possible to defend his city, but Cortez did not kill him, not yet. Cuauhtémoc became a prisoner, and Tenochtitlan ceased to exist as the capital of an independent empire. The siege had lasted for months. By its end, large parts of the city were destroyed, thousands were dead, others were starving, injured, or sick. The Spanish began building a colonial capital directly over the ruins, Mexico City, the political center of New Spain. The Aztec Empire was gone, but Cortez did not conquer it alone. Spanish steel mattered, horses mattered, guns mattered, smallpox mattered enormously. But tens of thousands of indigenous allies mattered just as much. The empire had been destroyed, partly by the peoples it had once dominated, and the human catastrophe was only beginning. Across the 16th century, war, forced labor, social disruption, and especially Old World diseases caused catastrophic population decline throughout Mexico. Entire communities disappeared, families were broken apart, cultures were transformed forever. It became one of the greatest demographic disasters in recorded history. Cortez had won an empire for Spain, but the world he conquered would never exist in the same form again. The Aztec Empire was destroyed, but Aztec culture was not erased. Nahuatl, the language spoken by the Mexica and many neighboring peoples, survives today. More than 1 million people still speak varieties of it in Mexico. Many words from Nahuatl entered languages around the world: chocolate, tomato, avocado, coyote. Words spoken every day, still carrying echoes of ancient Mexico. The ruins of Tenochtitlan still exist beneath modern Mexico City. The remains of the Templo Mayor stand only a short distance from the great cathedral built during Spanish rule. Two civilizations layered on top of one another, and on the flag of Mexico, the ancient symbol remains: an eagle on a cactus holding a serpent, the sign traditionally associated with the founding of Tenochtitlan. The empire disappeared, but its symbol still flies above Mexico today. Cuauhtémoc survived the fall of the capital, but his suffering continued. The Spanish tortured him, trying to discover where Aztec treasure had been hidden. According to a famous account, another captive cried out in pain, asking Cuauhtémoc if he was suffering too. Cuauhtémoc answered with cold defiance, "Do you think I am lying in a bed of roses?" Whether those were his exact words or not, the story survived because it captured how later generations remembered him: defeated but not broken, captured but still proud. The last ruler of a fallen empire, Tenochtitlan was destroyed, its temples fell, its empire vanished, but the people, the language, the stories, and the memory survived. Perhaps civilizations do not disappear completely. Perhaps they leave pieces of themselves behind, in language, in cities, in symbols, and in the people who remember them. If you enjoyed this video, press the like button and subscribe to the Ancient Atlas. The Last Days series continues. Stay with us.